Welcome to The Savvy Sauce, where we have practical chats for intentional living. I'm your host, Laura Duggar, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm thrilled to introduce you to our sponsor, WinShape Marriage. Their weekend marriage retreats will strengthen your marriage while you enjoy the gorgeous setting, delicious food, and quality time with your spouse. To find out more, visit them online at winshapemarriage.org/savvy. Kathryn Spitznagle is my enchanting guest for today, and her resume is quite impressive, but what actually is even more of a standout is her humble heart. So if you are one who learns from stories and encouragement, and you also appreciate actionable, practical tools, this conversation is definitely for you. Here's our chat. Welcome to The Savvy Sauce, Kathryn.
Oh, thank you, Laura. Appreciate you having me.
Well, I'd love for you just to start us off by giving us a snapshot of your background and also your current phase of life.
Okay, lots of seasons. Yeah, you learn something from all of them. So started out in journalism. I've kind of come back to my roots, interviewing folks. I was a sports writer. So I grew up in a family with 4 brothers. So when I went to college, I knew sports. And at the time, that was unusual to have a female sports writer. So I did that and then went into publishing. After I got my journalism degree. And since I'd been a sports writer, they put me in the men's division of this magazine publishing company. So I started out working for a helicopter magazine. And I was an editor and the only one that didn't know how to fly. And so they sent me to flight school in order to be a better editor and, learn how to communicate with our readers. And again, then because I'd done that and was in the men's division, they moved me then to Shooting Times, which was hunting and sport shooting. So then I learned how to shoot guns and reload in that whole industry. From there, I went to fashion. So I went to the women's division. And at first they said, Kat, are you sure you want to do this? And I said, well, this will be the first job you've put me on that won't kill me. I've learned how to fly planes and shoot guns. Let me have a shot at that Singer sewing machine. And I was a terrible seamstress. And they said, really, what we want you to do in fashion is to create a presence in New York, in Manhattan. And so the publisher was in Peoria, Illinois, but they wanted a presence in Manhattan. And so that's what I did for 3 years, worked remotely back and forth and created that presence, joined the Fashion Group International. They hired 3 consultants to fix me up. And so I laugh if you've ever seen the movie Miss Congeniality, that was me.
Wow.
So, learned all about the fashion industry and built those relationships with our advertisers. And also then we went into television and did a TV show, weekly TV show on Lifetime called Make It Fashion. And we were trying to blend the home sewing industry with the fashion industry. So if you saw this on the runway in Milan or in New York or in Paris, this is how you can make it yourself, be your own designer kind of thing. So that was my journalism start. Then moved to St. Louis, got married, had babies, and went into corporate communications. Worked for Purina in St. Louis, where I learned so much about leadership. Moved back to Peoria and went to work for Caterpillar. And when I retired from Caterpillar, then I started this business, Mentoring Women Millennials. And I have such a heart for this generation. I think they're so bright and smart and creative and entrepreneurial, and they get a bad rap. And so I wanted to have a platform to lift them up and also to give them tools. So the first year I wrote a book, Star Millennials, Developing the Next Generation of Leaders. And what I found, there were so many really sharp, bright millennials that had never had good leaders. They never had a mentor. They didn't have the tools. Many of them were entrepreneurs. They didn't intend to lead people. They had a craft. They started a business and it grew. And they're like, now I got people. What do I do with people? And as I was out speaking about my business, I found the audience very consistently had two types of attendees. One was what I would call a seasoned leader who said, "You're helping the millennials, thank you." Something along that line. And then I would have a young person stand up and say, "Do you have a book?" And after that happened several times, I thought, okay, Lord, I got this. Yeah, write a book. And I remember saying, that's a good idea, God, but I don't have time. And so if you want to know why COVID happened, it was me, because the good Lord said, hey, it's February of 2020. Looks like you have time right now. And so hired an editor. We wrote a book in 4 months and published that end of the year. And in 2021, then started the podcast.
Well, that's an incredible resume and such a whirlwind to getting here today. But you mentioned some leadership principles, especially at Purina. So, Kathryn, what are some of those servant leadership principles that you've learned and acquired over the years?
Over the years, yeah. Just some amazing leaders at Purina. Their culture was very much a servant leadership culture. Purina as a company was created in the 1950s by an independently wealthy gentleman, William H. Danforth. And he created the Youth Foundation in St. Louis. And he found once he got kids out of gangs and out of jail and off drugs, nobody would hire them. So he created a company to hire those kids, Purina. And so they told us that, the first day, he said, this is never confuse what we make with why we're here. We were created to develop people for life. What we make will change, but the reason we're here will not. And Danforth also wrote a book called I Dare You. I dare you to be the best you can be and help someone else do the same. And so that very first day, we were told the story of the genesis of Purina. We were given that book, I Dare You. And when we left orientation, we met, they had 360-degree mentoring. And they said, this is how we create this culture and we continue this for generations is through mentoring. So when you leave orientation, you're going to meet your leader mentor, your peer mentor, and in 90 days, you'll be mentoring. Everyone at Purina mentors, and we all learn from each other constantly. So that was the platform, and that was the culture. And when you think about feeling cherished and valued, that's how they did it. Because if you're going to mentor someone and someone's going to mentor you, you have value. And the people you're working with have value. And so that creating a cherished culture was their legacy. And then it's something that I took on to Caterpillar, and I continue now in my keynote speaking. That's one of the most popular, is how to create a cherished culture in the boardroom, in the living room, and in the classroom.
And so I won't ask for the entire keynote speech then, but is there an overview that you can give us of those things that we could implement that you've learned to implement over time as well?
Yes, some of the tools. And that was another wonderful thing about Purina that I saw then and haven't seen it since. It seemed unique to me at the time. Fast forward a few years and it was like, that was very unusual leadership. And one of the things that they valued was know your people, understand them, know their needs, know their wants. Even at this point, so I'm talking 30 years ago. I went to work there in 1990. They were talking about purpose. What's your purpose? Purina had a very specific purpose. We are a purposeful company. We're here to develop people for life. And they even said, I thought this was unique too at orientation. They said, we hire bright, smart people, and we don't expect you to stay here very long. Our job is to send you off better than we found you and with a positive impression of Purina. And here's why. When you leave here, you may go to another Fortune 50 company, which I did. You may be in a position to impact a merger or acquisition. You can buy and sell our stock. And at the very least, when you go to the grocery store, you can buy dog food. And we want it to be Purina.
That's incredible that actually happened then with you taking that forward.
Mm-hmm. And all of those lessons learned. So when I talk about creating a cherished culture, Purina, one of the things they did very well was to introduce a concept, illustrate it with a story, and then activate it with a tool. So, mentoring. They talked about here is the platform on which our company is built, developing people for life. And they told us that story then about Purina. Then they gave us the book, and then they gave us a mentor that we were meeting with each week, and they gave us an outline. So when you meet with your mentor or mentee, here are questions to ask. Here's a way to go about this. And the number one reason people don't mentor is because they don't know how. What's a process? And so how smart? Purina's like, here's an outline. Here are things to ask. Here are discussion topics. And here are different tools we're going to give you as you progress in leadership. And they're designed for you then to pass on. And so those are some of the tools when I talk about creating a cherished culture. One of the tools is, here are questions to ask. Here's how to have that dialogue. Here are discussion topics. When you're developing a relationship with this person, ask about their life outside of work. Ask about their family and friends and whatever, as much as they'd like to share. Not everyone does. That's okay too. Ask about their best day at work. What's a bad day at work? What's their best boss like? How do they like to be recognized? What's their purpose? One of the most insightful questions they asked at Purina was, why do you want to succeed? And why do you want this company to succeed? And those two questions give insight to someone's purpose. And so then if you frame discussions around their purpose and their values, it is exponentially more meaningful to them. So when I talk about how do you lead millennials and how is it different, those are a couple of the things. Understand their purpose, understand their life, their values outside of work, and frame things within their purpose. Here's an example, or their values. If someone says, my values are hard work and transparency. I want people to be honest. Those are a couple of my values. Okay. So if I were leading that person and I saw them being transparent with someone else, being open and honest, I would recognize them for that. Not just recognize them for the work, but recognize them for their value, demonstrating their value. I saw you be open and honest with that person. Thank you for that. If kindness is a value, I saw you. I saw what you did there today to help someone out without being asked. Thank you for that kindness. That resonates on a whole different level. And if you have to have a tough discussion with that person to say, frame it in those words. I know you value honesty and I do too. And so we need to have an honest conversation. And here's some things that I'm seeing in your behavior, in your leadership, or in your work style that can hold you back. So let's fix those. Whole different way to lead.
Absolutely. And I love how some of these, even one-page practical tools, you've included in the back of your book. So it's a plug and play. But I'm even thinking back to your mentoring relationships where you had this circle of mentors and you were mentoring. I think it's also helpful to get to hear one another's mistakes. So are you comfortable sharing any mistakes that you've made along the way that actually even turned out to be beneficial learning opportunities?
Absolutely. Loads of them. I've got loads of them. And one of the women I mentor has said, I think I've advanced my career 10 years by learning from your mistakes. And I love that. And she's like, now I'm going to make plenty of my own, but I'm not going to make yours. And I say, good. That's the point of all this. One of the big ones, I made it at Purina. I think a lot of places I would have been fired. Probably should have been. I was working in the marketing group, and we were like an internal marketing. So we did the new product introduction, point of purchase, point of sale materials, the legal documents that went out, the whole packet that would go out to a distributor, a grocery store. And Ever Ready battery was one of our product lines. And so we had internal clients, and as they had new product introductions, we'd get the materials together. We had in-house printing, all of the things, graphic design, and that was all under my purview. There's a letter that went out to distributors that was a legal document and had a number, and I pulled the wrong letter, the wrong number. And so and it wasn't discovered until, last minute. And we sat down with the client and they're like, oh my gosh, this is the wrong legal letter. And I'm the account rep. That was on me. So I had to go back. I had to go to Neil Lewis, my boss, and say, okay, we've got to pull this back before it all goes out. Reprint, which is going to be all our expense. We're going to have people working off shifts and all that sort of thing to do it quickly. And then reassemble all these Ever Ready battery packets and, be as close as we can to meeting their deadline. And so basically it's going to eat up our margin, and we're going to have more printing expense. We're going to have more labor, and we're going to have some unhappy people. And our client's not real happy either. And that was all me. And Neil said to me, I learned something today. Okay, and he said, until today, I thought you walked on water. And he said, now I know you're human, just like the rest of us. And I thought, oh, my word. And he's like, okay, so what happened? That was an honest mistake. How are we going to fix it? And I said, I've already pulled the right letter, getting it reprinted. Here's the, additional time and money. Here's how it's going to impact our margin. And he said, can we do it? And can we satisfy the customer and if not meet their deadline, very close? And I said, we can meet their deadline if we have people work third shift and, and he said, okay, let's do it. That's the right thing to do. And he said, Kathryn, I told you what I learned today. What did you learn? And I said, I learned how to be the kind of leader I want to be when someone makes a mistake. So, okay.
Wow, the humility in that is incredible. And thank you for sharing. Stories are so memorable. It makes me instantly reminded of 2 previous episodes. I'll make sure I link in the show notes, both with Jeff Henderson and Steve Robinson, accomplished businessmen, but who were also willing to share stories, and how, just like you, it actually made them a better, more relatable leader. And so that's encouraging.
And I knew when I got to Caterpillar, and particularly when I was running the Caterpillar Visitor Center, because that was so new, it had never been done in Caterpillar. And so we were going to make some mistakes, and we're going to learn, along the way. And there was more than one occasion where I was reminded of Neil Lewis. And I said, okay, I learned something today. You are human just like the rest of us. Now, how are we going to fix this? And then what did you learn?
Let's take a quick break to hear a message from our sponsor. Friends, I'm excited to share with you today's sponsor, WinShape Marriage. Do you feel like you need a weekend away with your spouse and a chance to grow in your relationship together at the same time? WinShape Marriage is a fantastic ministry that provides weekend marriage retreats to help couples grow closer together in every season and stage of life. From premarital to parenting to the empty nest phase, there is an opportunity for you. WinShape Marriage is grounded on the belief that the strongest marriages are the ones that are nurtured, even when it seems things are going smoothly, so that they're stronger if they do hit a bump along their marital journey. These weekend retreats are hosted within the beautiful refuge of WinShape Retreat, perched in the mountains of Rome, Georgia, which is a short drive from Atlanta, Birmingham, and Chattanooga. While you're there, you will be well-fed, well-nurtured, and well-cared for. During your time away in this beautiful place, you and your spouse will learn from expert speakers and explore topics related to intimacy, overcoming challenges, improving communication, and more. I've stayed on site at WinShape before, and I can attest to their generosity, food, and content. You will be so grateful you went. To find an experience that's right for you and your spouse, head to their website, winshapemarriage.org/savvy. That's WINSHAPE marriage.org/savvy, SAVVY. Thanks for your sponsorship. You've had so much experience in different areas and as a corporate leader. So what is it that drew you specifically to have a heart for millennials, which we can define as those approximately born between the 1980s and early 2000s?
Mm-hmm. I really started working with them. My last role at Caterpillar, I was a director of global sustainability. And it was within public affairs. So Caterpillar was leading a natural infrastructure coalition. I was working with a lot of different entities, public, private, governmental. We're trying to get language passed into law. That was a big portion of my job. Another portion of my job was to be out speaking about what Caterpillar was doing in the world of sustainability. And I loved that. What I found was the sustainability groups of Caterpillar employees all around the world. We do a global call quarterly, learning what everybody was doing. They were all this age group. And when we would do the river cleanup on Saturday, these are the people that showed up with their kids. And when we do tree plantings, these are the people that showed up with their kids. And I was like, okay. And I remember saying to my peers, you know what, this group of employees, these young people, are not going to retire like with a pension, like we are, with healthcare, like we do. There's so many things that we have garnered through our career appropriately. They don't have that. What drives loyalty for them and what engages them with Caterpillar are these things. These things we're doing through the foundation, where we're giving back and improving the world, and the things we're doing in sustainability, giving back, improving the world. They are so much more engaged in our company through these things. And so I kind of knew. I thought, okay, I'm not sure exactly where the Lord is leading, but it's going to be with those people. And that was the thing I knew when I retired, that, okay, this is what I want to do. And then the more I worked, I started the business, Mentoring Women Millennials. The more I worked with these young women, the more I saw, yes, there's a need. There's a need here. And I always, and again, people would ask, why? Why are you so connected? And I said, first of all, I saw the value in them. But secondly, I think I was one. My husband and I laughed that we never really fit in with our generation. And here's why. We both were out of school and working on our careers when we met. And in our generation, you got married right out of high school, or at the very least, right out of college. And so, our families had given up. They're like, they're never going to get married. They're working. They got this whole career thing going. And so then we got married. Well, then we didn't have children until we were in our 30s. Highly irregular for our generation. We were entrepreneurial. So we were looking at franchises in our 20s. And our families were like, just get a job. What is this? You got to buy something, and then you buy something else. And my husband owned a business, his first business, in his 30s. We both had side hustles. Again, friends and family were like, just do one job. What is with you guys? Always got all these things, going. And then when I took the job in fashion and I was working in Manhattan and living in Peoria, they're like, what do you even call that kind of work? I'm like, you call it remote, working remotely? Yeah. And so I think part of my heart for them is I was one. And so when they talk about some of the struggles and the things that are endearing to them, I'm like, yeah, I got you. I felt like that too.
That is incredible. And I think it really does make you the perfect person for that mentor-mentee relationship. And I kind of want to camp out on that further because we've alluded to it, and some of these tips are in your book where you highlight those discussion topics that give people the tools. But then if we take it a step further or personalize it, how can all of us as listeners begin a mentoring relationship like the one you've described? And I'm even thinking of the beginning point. Do you think it's up to the mentor or the mentee to initially reach out?
Either one. Yeah, either one can work. When I left, Purina, having had this wonderful leadership experience and mentoring environment, I thought, well, this must be what all corporations are like. No, doesn't make them bad. They're just different. So when I got to Caterpillar, that was very male dominated. I remember calling my mentor at Purina, who is still my mentor today. She mentored me for 22 years at Caterpillar after I left Purina, and then was one of the biggest proponents of me writing my book and starting my business. And we still get together today. So when they talk about developing people for life, they're very serious about that. And so when I got to Caterpillar, I thought, well, they don't seem to have this. I think I'll start a mentoring program. Well, I was, in some little gal in marketing. You're not going to start a mentoring program for a Fortune 50 company out of that spot. It comes up through HR and Office of Business Practices and legal and all of that. Anyway, I called my mentor at Purina, very frustrated, and I said, Lynn, you and Neil make a place for me. I'm coming back. So they don't have a mentoring program here. And she said, okay, first of all, we didn't train you up to come back. Mm-hmm. Your job is to take this forward. And she said, are there young women there that, are one of few? And I said, yes. And she said, well, mentor them. And she said, are there leaders that need support? And I said, yes. And she said, okay, support them. She said, are there teams that need to be built? I said, yes. And she said, then you have good work to do. There, go. And she hung up. I thought, okay. And so from that moment on, when I would see an announcement that would come through email where a woman was being hired into Caterpillar, I would reach out to her and just say, do you have a mentor or would you like one? And for 22 years, they all said yes. And so that's what I did. I worked with those women. And, here's another God wink. When my announcement went out then that I was retiring, these women all started coming back to me wherever they were in the nation and even in the world. Many of them had gone on to do other things, bigger, better things. And they all started reaching out to me. Someone had forwarded the announcement to them and said, we want you to start a business, a mentoring business, and help others just like you helped us. And we will help you. And one said, you need to write a book and I'll write the foreword. Another one said, yes, and you need to do podcasts and I'll be on one. Another one said, I know what's going to stop you at your website, so I'm going to help you with your website. Another one said, you're going to need testimonials. So she posted on social media, anyone that's ever been mentored by Kathryn Spitznagle, leave a message here. Yeah, very humbling. And another one said, I'm now a VP of a big company in Chicago and I will hire you. And so I retired one day and started the business the next.
Incredible how that all came back around. And I gleaned so much from your stories in your book and then even getting to connect with you before today. But there's another story about servant leadership that you shared from the man who you've named your previous boss, Neil Lewis.
Yes. Neil Lewis.
Will you share? Do you know which one I'm thinking of?
Yeah. You need to know 3 personal things about everyone who works for you. Yes. Okay. So Neil Lewis had leadership meetings. There was 12 of us were his leadership team every Monday morning. He was also a minister outside of work. So a lot of times we would all laugh that we were getting the rehash of the sermon from yesterday as part of his leadership. But he often gave us assignments. And one Monday morning, he said, okay, here is your assignment. I want you to know 3 personal things about everyone who works for you. And they need to be things that aren't in their personnel file. And he said, I'm going to ask you sometime this week about one of those people, but you won't know which one. So you need to know all of them. And I, lousy leader, I was just learning. And I said, Neil, I have 10 people. 3 things, 10 people. That's 30 things I got to know. And he said, Kathryn, good math. You have some work to do. I thought, oh boy. So I went back and I interviewed each one of my 10 people. 3 things, found them out, followed the assignment, and I was ready. And I saw him in the hall later in the week. He said, Kathryn, walk with me. Going to the next meeting. He said, okay, tell me 3 personal things about Kathy, who works for you. I said, okay. Kathy is recently divorced. She has an 18-month-old baby, and she is moving to a new apartment. And he said, "What have you done to help her?" And honest to God, I said, "That wasn't part of the assignment." And he looked at me and I said, "No, wait a minute. I did help her. I changed her hours. She has a longer commute now into St. Louis, so she's going to come in at 8:30 and work till 5. And I was feeling pretty proud of myself, like bonus question. And he said, "Did she come to you or did you go to her?" And I said, "Well, she came to me, but I said it was okay." I said, "Kathryn, know your people. If you don't know your people, you don't know what they need. And if you don't know what they need, you can't help them. And if you can't help them, what in the world are you doing here?" It says, leaders, we're here to serve. And if you're not here to serve, you need to step out. I became a different leader that day. One who chose to lead by serving.
I just wanted to let you know there are now multiple ways to give when you visit thesavvysauce.com. We now have a donation button on our website, and you can find it under the donate page, which is under the tab entitled Support. Our mailing address is also provided if you would prefer to save us the processing fee and send a check that is tax deductible. Either way, you'll be supporting the work of Savvy Sauce Charities and helping us continue to reach the nations with the good news of Jesus Christ. Make sure you visit thesavvysauce.com today. Thanks for your support.
You know, the other piece, the other thing that he taught me there, Laura, as we continued to walk, because he always wanted to bring things back around to a positive. He was going to make his point, but he was not going to lead me there, you know. And he said, "Kathryn, do you understand what you missed there? It was such a missed opportunity with Kathy to engage her and to help her feel cherished." And he said, "That's the difference. When you anticipate someone's need and you go to them before they ask, that's the opportunity. That's the gold. That's what engages people and garners their loyalty. And that's when they feel cherished. That was the real missed opportunity."
And that never left you. And that's probably blessed so many people hearing that. What about lessons of forgiveness in leadership as well? Do you have any stories to illustrate that?
Yes, and that's another lesson from Neil Lewis that was a profound lesson for me that I've never heard anywhere else, that forgiveness is part of leadership. So I learned this again, lousy leader, just starting out, and when he put me into leadership, I was like, how hard could it be? Tell people what to do, they do it. And then came my first employee opinion survey results, and they were bad. The numbers were bad, the comments were bad, the people were unhappy, and the comments to me were hurtful. They were justified, but they were hurtful. And so when I got all the information, I left. I was upset. The next day when I came into the office, I just went in my office and closed the door. I thought, they don't want to talk to me. I don't want to talk to them. That's fine. I'll just work in here. So Neil gave me a little time to cool off, and then he came in. And on my desk, one of the things that Purina does in terms of creating that cherished culture is to have things around you that revitalize you. And so they ask you one of the first days about what are things that revitalize you. And I said, okay, fresh flowers revitalize me. They remind me of my grandmother, Nanny, and being in the garden. Notes are cards from handwritten, from friends and family, and a walk outside. Those are 3 things that revitalize me. Okay. So that, again, registered with Neil Lewis. He knew that was a way to frame things for me. So when he came in that morning, he picked up one of the cards from my desk and he handed it to me and he said, "Would you read that card?" And I said, "You can read it." He said, No, I'm asking you to read it out loud to me. So it was a card from someone on my team, very complimentary about my leadership style and how it impacted them. And he said, "Is that the leader you are today?" And I said, "No. But in fairness, they were mean to me. They said some very hurtful things. And yeah, I'm not happy." He said, "Okay." And he said, "Kathryn, as leaders, our job is to give first and give again." And he said, "Do you know what the bridge is between giving first and giving again?" And I said, "No." And he said, 4. I said, "Neil, I'm not tracking with you." And he said, "Forgive." And I said, "Oh, forgiveness." And he said, "Nope. Forgiveness is something someone else does. That's a noun. Forgive is a verb. And that's what I need to see you do. Forgive." He said, "Kathryn, forgiveness is a big part of leadership. And it's something that will hold you back for the rest of your life. So I'm asking you today to be the leader I know you to be and forgive."
Wow. Well, and even the way he modeled that and the way you've shared that story, it also reminds me of another leadership tool that you mention in your book, which I think if somebody's experiencing this, that could be a really practical next step. So it's called the hero page. Will you
Okay.
elaborate on that for us?
Yes. And so at Purina, when they talked about having these one-on-ones with your team, with your mentees, with your mentors, kind of framing the dialogue in 3 buckets, called a 3-bucket exercise. And this is how I still mentor today. So the first thing we ask people to come prepared with is bucket 1, what are we celebrating? What are we celebrating? What have you learned? What have you accomplished? What has gone so well since the last time we spoke? Because we as people, but particularly as women, pass through things very quickly and go, "Yep, done, good, on to the next thing." Yeah, we don't take that time to celebrate. And Purina was very focused on what they called reveling. Take just a minute to revel and do. That was good work. Did good work, or whatever was accomplished, personal and professional. It was things at home. Baby slept 4 hours straight. Yay! Okay, so bucket 1, what are we celebrating? Bucket 2. So bucket 1 they called aha. Bucket 2 they called what's out there that you need to do? What's on your to-do list? Is there something you need to get a plan for? Is there something that you want to talk through that's kind of on your assignment board? Something like that. And we'll talk through some tactics. Bucket 3 is what in the world? So anything that seems overwhelming, caught you by surprise, you didn't know was part of the job, you didn't know was part of life. Those are the things we want to talk about in bucket 3. Every time. So you want me to tell you the things that are overwhelming me and that I don't know where to start? Yes. Yes, every week. Because here's what we'll do. We will take the power out of that. Once you fess it, we're going to fix it and say, okay, this is what's overwhelming me. This is what I'm anxious about. This is what caught me by surprise. And we're going to figure out how to break it down into something actionable. And then we're going to move it to bucket 2. And next week, we're going to be talking about those action steps. And pretty soon, it's going to move to bucket 1. There you go. We're celebrating. Okay. That process that I learned at Purina, still did at Caterpillar, doing today, that just warms my heart when I see the folks that I've worked with who have now gone on to do other things. And one of the guys on my team at CAT now works for McDonald's in Chicago. And he said, Kathryn, that's our onboarding process. And so anybody that comes through his team in McDonald's, that's what they learn how to do. And he said, that was just gold. And you can talk about creating a safe space. But again, the difference with Purina was they gave you a tool. We are a cherished culture. We create a safe space. And you know what? Here's how. By asking this question and by setting aside time to answer it and wrestle with it and work through it. Now, having said all that, where do you put this information as you're learning this about this person? You're learning what they're celebrating. You're learning what their values are. You're learning what they like to do outside of work, what's important to them, learning about their purpose. That's a hero page. And so they gave us a tool and they said it's very simple. A hero page, you just record things that you have learned about this person, that you respect and admire about them. And you can do one for yourself. They ask you to do the first one for you. But then also to do them you can do them for a peer, you can do them for a leader. You can also do them for someone you're struggling with. Because oftentimes we aren't really looking for the positives in that person. So the logic behind a hero page is once you've created it, you're going to look for things to put on it. Positives, all positives. Negatives we remember. Positives we're looking for. That's first reason. The second reason for a hero page is you may have a tough day with that person sometime. And if you do, you go back and look at your hero page and it puts things in perspective. This isn't going well today, but here are the things I respect and admire about this person. And yes, perspective. The third reason is they may have a tough day sometime. And what an incredible gift you can be to them. Here's an example. When I worked at Caterpillar, I had wonderful leaders, some remarkable women leaders at Caterpillar. I think because there were so few of them, they were rock stars. And one that I worked for was sent to Beijing, China on a short term, 6-month or 1-year assignment. At the same time, I was also mentoring someone in that Beijing office. And it was very remote. They were in a remote area, creating an office, creating an HR office, where there's a factory. And the person I was mentoring said, let me give you an idea of what we're struggling with here, what our situation is. And I'm at corporate, and I said, well, whatever it is, I think I could send you some of our signage, some of our value signs. That's what you need. I'll send you some value signs. You can put them up on your walls. And she said, Kathryn, we don't have walls. We're working out of a tent. And I said, oh. And she said, each morning we send a bus out to the rural areas here in China. And it stops to pick up workers. And if dad can't go, he sends mom. And if mom can't go, she puts a couple kids on the bus. And we never know from day to day who's coming to work. What we do know is that bus will be full. They will get 2 meals while they're at work. breakfast and lunch. And then when it returns them home, they will have gotten paid. She said, we are all but paying people in chickens. Do you understand the situation, the gravity of what we're trying to do to come in here and create an office and HR processes? And she said, first, we're trying to determine who our employees are. I said, oh. And she said, our leader is struggling. And she said, will you get on a call with her today? I said, yes, I will. I said, give me a minute. And she said, you're going to get her hero page. And I said, yes, I am. So we got on the call. Lois, Kathryn. Is this the woman that led one of the first NPI projects for Caterpillar as a woman with our flagship tractor? And she said, yes. I said, is this the woman who was handed a belt buckle and a t-shirt and created global merchandising stores all around the world? And she said, yes. I said, is this the woman who has been married 30 plus years happily, raised 2 remarkable children, and showed us all it was possible? Yes. I don't know what you're struggling with today, but I do know the woman who did these things can tackle this. What a gift you would be to another leader on the day that they needed it in that moment, just to remind them of their value.
Whew. That encouragement is so powerful, and you're such an engaging storyteller. And like you had mentioned previously, you've gone on from corporate America to now beginning your own business, including your podcast that we'll link to, Star Millennials. So I'm curious, Kathryn, are there any stories from those podcast episodes that really come to mind as you think of any standout lessons or your favorites?
Oh my gosh. There are so many. It just seems like when I think I can't meet someone any more incredible, I do. And again, good Lord's hand. They come from all different paths. We're international now. A couple of them that really stand out to me. Michael Kuzma. He invented this self-playing guitar. He knew people in his life who had either never been able to play the guitar and wanted to, or they had experienced some sort of an injury or illness that then prevented them from doing that, that they loved. And so he created this and just said, this is, I want this to bring joy and be fun and, for people. And I guess the part of the platform that I have for the podcast is purpose. How are you living your purpose? Kushi Shah is 19-year-old, so she's a little bit younger than a millennial even. Created a company called Drizzle, and it is an informed, what do I want to say? It's an irrigation company, and she created this as a science project in grade school. She's now in college at MIT and Harvard and Northeastern. So she's attending classes at all. She went to a science and math school in Chicago for high school, finished early, and took a gap year at 17. And I said, so you traveled? And she said, nope, I decided I'd just run that business full time, Drizzle. And so her family's of Indian descent. They'd gone to India and seen the need for water, clean water. And she said, coming back to the States, I saw lawn sprinklers running, and it was raining. And I thought, I need to fix that. There are products on the market that will turn a sprinkler off if it's raining. Her product is predictive. She's 19. Yeah. Yeah. So folks from St. Jude, folks from Midwest Food Bank, just incredible. Obviously, I can't name one. There's so many. And those who are living their purpose in all walks of life, in all places around the world, I want to talk to them.
Wow. And Kathryn, you've invested in so many people and highlighted so many people through your podcast. As you look back, what are you happiest that you invested your life in?
Well, I'm a mom, boy mom. So that would have to be my first, my boys. Again, one of the women that I mentor said to me early on, Kathryn, one of the things I love the most is you're from the other side. I said, Kelsey, what does that mean? I'm from the other side. And she said, you've already done all of this. You've done the corporate life. You understand small business. You have a decades-long happy marriage. You've raised your boys. They're happy. They're successful. If you did this, we can do this, and you can help us. And so that investment on so many levels, is coming back.
Love that. And would you be willing just to share anything else about your business or what all you have to offer so that we can continue learning from you after this conversation today?
Oh, absolutely. So the books that you mentioned, so Star Millennials, Developing the Next Generation of Leaders, that's the book. And it recounts, so many of these leadership stories. And then in the back, as you said, are the different tools. And I have to credit the Caterpillar engineers because when I went to Caterpillar and I would tell these stories about Purina, or I would live out something they had taught me very early on, the meeting after the meeting, some of these gentlemen came up to me and said, that thing you just did in that meeting, can you write that down? I'm like what? And they said, like the words or the process. And so it began. So I'd start writing down the words, and they might put a graphic with it or somehow improve it. And so through the years, this same group kept coming back to me. And then when they saw the announcement that I was retiring, they showed up again and said, okay, we need one more thing. What? A spreadsheet. What do you mean a spreadsheet? And they said, all through the years, we have all of these tools now that we've created out of your head onto paper that we can use, and we're using them. If you can give us a spreadsheet that says, if you're having this leadership issue, use this tool. So, God bless the engineers. Page 1. Toolkit. Spreadsheet. If you're having this leadership issue, use these tools, page whatever. So I credit them. And the tools are in the back of the hard book. What I found when I started doing workshops was people didn't want to write in the book, and they also wanted something bigger. And they wanted, a place to make notes and doodle and that sort of thing. So that's why we have the book and then the toolkit. So my business is Mentoring Women Millennials, and I do one-on-one mentoring with individuals, small business primarily. They'll bring me in to work with their women leaders, but also just individuals who are in some sort of a transition in life. or that have never had a mentor and would like one. And so I do the one-on-one mentoring, also with nonprofits. And I'm a now 18-year breast cancer survivor, still in treatment. And I also mentor breast cancer survivors and do and keynote speaking. I'm part of I work with the Capital City Speakers Bureau. And so do speaking there, and I'm prepping for a TED Talk. So that'll be those are the next things.
Love it. Always something up your sleeve. We will link to your website so that people can follow up and get in touch if that would be a good partnership. And you may already be familiar that we're called the Savvy Sauce because savvy is synonymous with practical knowledge or insight. And so as my final question for you today, Kathryn, what is your Savvy Sauce?
When I left Purina, I asked Neil, how do I ever repay this company that has given so much to me? And he said, take what you've learned and help someone else. And so if you learn from me, that would be my ask, help someone else.
Love that. Amen. Great Savvy Sauce. And Kathryn, you're just so poised and classy and full of insight. And it was an absolute pleasure to get to host you as my guest today. So thank you for being my guest.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Laura.
One more thing before you go. Have you heard the term gospel before? It simply means good news, and I want to share the best news with you. But it starts with the bad news. Every single one of us were born sinners, but Christ desires to rescue us from our sin, which is something we cannot do for ourselves. This means there is absolutely no chance we can make it to heaven on our own. So for you and for me, it means we deserve death and we can never pay back the sacrifice we owe to be saved. We need a Savior. But God loved us so much, He made a way for His only Son to willingly die in our place as the perfect substitute. This gives us hope of life forever in right relationship with Him. That is good news. Jesus lived the perfect life we could never live and died in our place for our sin. This was God's plan to make a way to reconcile with us so that God can look at us and see Jesus. We can be covered and justified through the work Jesus finished if we choose to receive what He has done for us. Romans 10:9 says that if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, you will be saved. So would you pray with me now? Heavenly Father, thank you for sending Jesus to take our place. I pray someone today, right now, is touched and chooses to turn their life over to you. Will you clearly guide them and help them take their next step in faith to declare you as Lord of their life? We trust you to work and change lives now for eternity. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. If you prayed that prayer, you are declaring Him for me, so me for Him. You get the opportunity to live your life for Him. And at this podcast, we're called the Savvy Sauce for a reason. We want to give you practical tools to implement the knowledge you have learned. So you ready to get started? First, tell someone. Say it out loud. Get a Bible. The first day I made this decision, my parents took me to Barnes & Noble and let me choose my own Bible. I selected the Quest NIV Bible and I love it. You can start by reading the book of John. Also, get connected locally, which just means tell someone who's a part of a church in your community that you made a decision to follow Christ. I'm assuming they will be thrilled to talk with you about further steps, such as going to church and getting connected to other believers to encourage you. We want to celebrate with you too, so feel free to leave a comment for us here if you did make a decision to follow Christ. We also have show notes included where you can read scripture that describes this process. And finally, be encouraged. Luke 15:10 says, "In the same way I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. The heavens are praising with you for your decision today. And if you've already received this good news, I pray you have someone to share it with. You are loved, and I look forward to meeting you here next time.